So, first off, are you ready? Look, there's a pretty much a bog standard rehearsal room. That does look like the kind of rehearsal room of my youth. That does, like downstairs at the boardwalk where I used to rehearse, where it was smelly and there were snail trails. So the considerations for are you ready? Plainly, before you set foot on a stage, you should practice and practice and practice some more. I sometimes get sent music by bands who aren't ready, and I give them advice. Maybe you aren't ready. Maybe you should go back and rehearse some more. There's a kind of show you can do if you're an artist, which is neither rehearsal room and neither a gig in a bona fide venue. So when you think you're ready, before you've booked a show, this is what I think every band should do, every artist should do this. They should set themselves up in the rehearsal room in show conditions, in not in corners like you would normally rehearse, but in a show condition. Invite a few close friends down, get some ice, bring some drinks, sit those people down in the corner and do the show for those people you trust. And do that intermediary show before you've even thought about playing live and speaking to a venue. I know a few people who've done this, and you do the show in order. You don't kind of stop and talk like you do on rehearsals. You don't go for you have a break. You do it sequentially in the time and order that you want to do it live, and you do it for some close friends, and then you feedback. And that idea that you can have an almost show will completely change how you go about doing your next show, because you've sort of been through the process already and you're not kind of going onto a stage completely green. We used to, when I was a musician, we used to record rehearsals. We used to review those rehearsals. We used to change them. We'd record sets. We did so much work before we even set foot on stage, because you only really get a chance to have one show, to do your first show once. Let's have a look, see what people are saying here. I've been playing professionally. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm just trying to keep an eye on chat there, so everybody's happy. So yeah, so that by the point, if you do these intermediary shows, by the time you're ready to kind of step foot onto a stage, you should feel a little more confident about it. I think it's also important to decide what you want from a show. I think some people kind of, you sometimes see bands where some people are more committed to being in a band and more committed to, perhaps trying to succeed in being a band. But I think everybody who's doing that show should absolutely consider what it is they actually want from it. Do they plainly want the experience of it and the fun of it and the feeling of that energy exchange between you and an audience? But, do you want to make money from it? Do you want to invite industry? Do you want to use it as a stepping stone to kind of move to advance your musical career? I think some of those questions you should probably answer before you even consider doing a show as well. And it's probably good to have every band member, however big or small your group is, on the same page about it. Okay, so do I need to work with the promoter and the benefits of going it alone? So I would suggest, and I'm happy to be told otherwise, that if you're putting on your first show in a very small space, the benefits of using a promoter are negligible, and that you've got far more to gain from going it alone and booking your own show. Those small venues are easy to fill, they're not expensive to hire, they're easy to administer, and that learning curve that you would get from going through that process that a promoter would do and you becoming the promoter is far more beneficial to you than bringing a promoter in who not only is going to sort of rob you of that experience and that understanding of the process, but also want paying. And obviously the margins are so slight at those in terms of making or losing money at this small grassroots level. You don't really need those extra people to pay. So on the whole, there are 3 live options open to artists. The band promotes a show, a promoter promotes a show, or there's a co-promotion between the two. And I categorically think that at a small grassroots level, say you're looking at a venue that's 100 capacity, 80 to 100 capacity, one of those small, maybe back room of a pub or an upstairs room, one of those very small grassroots venues, the band or the artist, or you as a solo performer, or whatever configuration your creative endeavour is, you've got far more to learn from putting on the show yourself. I mean, let's look at what a promoter would do. Now, some of these aren't going to apply to the very first GMV show, because some of these things are only going to apply to shows down the road. But this is what a promoter would do. Plainly, promoters identify artists they want to book and promote. I sometimes chase artists, sometimes they're presented to me, sometimes I'm surprised by an artist I see. But by and large, I'm looking for people to promote and put on all the time as a venue promoter. A promoter would liaise with artist representation, if they have any, sometimes booking agent or management. We may well be talking about artists at this level, putting on your own show who have no representation, and the artist is looking after themselves. Now, a promoter would create a costing and a projection for the show. Now, I think if you're putting on your own show, we'll get into it later, but you would categorically do that. Probably not at this level. You won't see artist fee deposits going backwards and forwards, but certainly later on, a promoter would pay a fee deposit to secure that artist. Promoters would hire the venue and potentially pay a deposit for that venue. So if you're taking on the role of promoter, you would be doing that. Sign contracts in the venue. If you're hiring a venue, you might be given a contract to sign. If you're promoting, if a promoter promotes an artist, they're probably going to get sent a contract from the artist representation, like say the booking agent. Putting a marketing plan together. If you're the promoter, you're probably going to do that. Set up ticketing. If you promote your own show, you're probably going to do that. And then plainly, that big one in bold in the middle, they promote the show. Promoters liaise with venue manager and in-house technical staff. They liaise with artists and the artist tour manager. On the day of the show, they're printing signage and ticket list. Look, list is spelled incorrectly there. How dreadful. Should we fix it? Don't look at that. Look at that. There we go. For shame. They print signage, ticket lists, guest lists, and paperwork for the day of the show. Probably buying artist catering and giving buyout to the TM. Buyout is money instead of a meal. And then they'll run the show, or the show's run via a promoter's representative. And they pay the artist and the venue, and then they feed back to the artist representation. Now, if you are putting on your own show, you probably are going to have to take on some of these roles. But I still think it's like a brilliant learning experience. Some of these more complicated things you probably won't have to do, because these are things that are going to happen later on when artists start to kind of develop. So, types of promoter. If you do decide to use a promoter, there's various types you can look at. So there are venue-based promoters. So my role at Night and Day is I am a venue-based promoter. I control the diary at that venue. Now, yes, we put on shows elsewhere, but by and large, most of what I'm doing is configuring that diary just for that one venue. There are local promoters who just promote locally, maybe promoting their town or city. Then you've got your big national and international promoters, your Live Nations and SGMs and Metropolises and Kilimanjaros and DHPs of this world. Then there's self-promotion, which is what we're going to talk about today by and large, and then co-promotion. So do you need one? So I still think that the learning curve, the element of control, obviously there's no, you've got control. If you go with a promoter, there's an element of control you're giving away, an element of trust you have to invest in that promoter. That goes away when you're doing it yourself. You can be in control of branding, and also you remove that money split of that other person. So you've decided to put on a show yourself. You're going to be the promoter. You're going to seize the reins and take control of it. So approaching venues. You want to hire a venue. What does a venue want? Just so credit where credit's due, that's October Drift at Night and Day, taken by the excellent Truster Fox photography a couple of years ago. He's fabulous. That's a venue being everything it's supposed to be right there. So, what does a venue want? So, whether that venue's got an in-house promoter or just somebody holding the diary, they probably want to hear some music. They probably want to hear, what it is you're doing. They're probably going to like to see a short biography. If you've got press quotes, if you've managed to kind of garner any press or get any notices online or in print, good to kind of get those to them. I like to see a list of previous and noteworthy shows. So if you've played for another venue and it's gone well, or you've supported an artist, or you've played for another promoter, or you've done a festival, always good to know which of those shows are, and what you've done historically. Links to socials. So when an artist gets in touch with me and says, "Oh, we really want to play the venue," and they send links to socials, I'd go on a bit of a snoop and do some detective work, because it's always illuminated to see how often those people post on socials, the kind of content they have, the amount of followers they have, how proactive that artist is. You're going to need to tell the venue or the promoter your audience size. So I always want to know this, and this isn't trying to catch an artist out, but it's about a frank conversation about how the show might go. So if it's your first show and you think you have an audience of like 10 people, and I'm programming night and day, and night and day holds 300 once we've got guests in, then plainly that's perhaps not the best fit for you. Maybe you need to look at a smaller venue. And so I think being candid about your audience size is a really good idea. I mean, I'd rather have an artist I adored be completely candid and say we have no audience in Manchester whatsoever, and then I start to think about how I can work with that artist that I absolutely love, than be kind of lied to and then have to kind of sort of like have a mystery at the heart of promoting a show. So a candid conversation about just where you are in terms of your growth is really important. And then plainly contact info. Some tips. But you can bundle all this stuff in an EPK. That's really good. Send links to music. Don't send files. No venue diary holder wants an email with big MP3s attached to it. So just send links. Consider how many emails that venue gets. Most of them are going to get a lot. So try not to overburden. So keep it to the facts. Be pleasant. But no big, don't write a gigantic tract about why you want to play that venue, because most of those people who are receiving those emails are getting 50, 100 a day, and they can't wade through Tolstoy to get to the nitty gritty of about your band. So consider the volume of emails that those venues are getting. If you don't get a reply, be persistent, but try not to be a pain. So I think I would absolutely not write off a venue you want to hire if you don't get an email back straight away. That probably is down to the volume of their workload. So just be persistent and say, "Hi, I sent you an email, really keen to put on a show at the venue. I've heard really good things about the venue. We think we can put on a really good show and bring people." Start saying the things that a promoter or venue diary holder wants to hear, and just be persistent. If that venue is open during the day, like night and day, it's obviously night and day is a cafe during the day, and I'm sat upstairs. If somebody comes in and says, "Hi, Jay isn't around, is they?" They phone me up upstairs and go, "Listen, there's somebody here to see you. Have you got a minute?" And if I've got free, I'll just come downstairs and have a conversation with people. So I think there are kind of creative ways you can find to interact with those diary holders. Consider the right venue for the right band. So if you're in Manchester, there's a jazz venue called Matt and Fred's. And Matt and Fred's is Manchester's most famous, not most long-standing, but probably Manchester's key jazz venue. So if you're a jazz artist, that would be your number one call. You wouldn't go to Rebellion down on Deansgate Locks, which is a heavy metal venue. That is an amazing space with a great PA and great people running it, but their database doesn't speak to you. The people they're going to be trying to kind of speak to try and buy tickets or come to your show are going to be completely at odds with what you're doing. So yes, you're thinking about capacity, but you're also thinking about the style of venue and the people who come to that venue and who they speak to on their socials and their mailing lists. Venue diaries work like this. Somebody gets in touch and says, "Hello, have you April the 2nd free? I'd love to put on a show." You have a conversation about how that show might work and whether it's appropriate. If both parties agree, then you say, "I'd like to hold that date, please." The venue goes, "That date's free. You're the first pencil," and you become the first pencil. Now, if another promoter or band gets in touch and wants to have that date, they become the second pencil, and the third pencil, and the fourth pencil, and they all stack up. Now, if somebody's ready to confirm their date and say, "I want to go ahead," the diary holder challenges the ones ahead of that person. And the one ahead has 24 hours to either say, "Yes, we want to confirm," or "No, we want to release." If they release it, you move up the chain of command, and that's how it works. So the key thing is, if the venue gets back to you, be brisk with your replies, because there might be other people fighting for that day. That's how the pencil system works. All right. Here's a message from Molly. I'm one of the project managers at Make Music Day. If you're inspired by Jay's presentation to put on a gig on the 21st of June, we're here to help facilitate your ideas and can help match you with venues and musicians. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Liz says, how long would you leave it before you chase people? I'd probably only give it a couple of days, because you want to get moving. You know, you want to get that date inked in. I mean, at the moment, it's kind of been weird because obviously I've had a year where diaries have been in something of a holding pattern. I've been juggling dates around. The moment the government announced the roadmap last week, my diary went bananas because people had something to cling to and something to focus on, and you know, dates that they could that seem to make sense. You know, if you look at the dates do make sense. And so I'd probably leave it a couple of days, you know, and then chase them again. I mean, I think if ultimately if it gets to like 2 or 3 weeks and you've not heard back, it's probably not going to happen, because you know it's they're ignoring you because the date's full and they can't be bothered replying, so they're being essentially just being poor correspondence, or that you're being given a nod that venue's not very proactive and maybe they're not brilliant people to work with. What I would say is trying to, when you're putting that email together, try to get everything into one email, try to make it concise. Like I say, EPKs and links are really, really brilliant. Don't send something like this. This is a real email I got maybe a year or two ago. And that's literally it. It says slot vacancies. And it says, Jay, just looking for a slot for my band in a couple of months' time. Hope to hear from you soon. And then a name. It didn't say who the band were. It didn't have links to music. It didn't have links to socials. It literally said that. And that's possibly the worst approach I've ever had, because it doesn't do anything. I mean, what am I supposed to do? I mean, what I did do was take a deep breath and go, okay, you know, don't shoot the messenger. And then I said, okay, can you send some music? Can you send all those things I'm telling you to send? I then listed and said, can you send them back? I don't know whether they got a gig or not, but it's quite a poor first stab at it, that, because it's not really giving me anything. The best part of my job is receiving music and hearing music. That's a joy. You know, doing costings and doing legwork, that's all part of it. But kind of being sent music is like brilliant. And so, you know, you should, I mean, you know, not all diary holders are going to feel that way perhaps, but I do. So when people are sending me things, what do I want? I want something exciting. Plainly, subjectivity plays a part in that. But I want something that makes me excited. Ideally, I do want something with an audience, or the potential for one, because, you know, I don't own Night and Day. I work there. If I put on a series of shows where there's nobody in the room, the proprietor I work for isn't going to be best pleased. I have an obligation to keep the venue going. I quite like seeing artists with a vision. And by that I mean all the bands and artists that I've ever fallen in love with in my life have always generated like a little universe that I want to live in. And so they've thought about the whole thing. You know, they think about the music and the image and their name and their presentation, how they speak. And so some of those people where they've just generated that little bubble universe, you kind of so want to be part of that. And so I think some kind of vision and some kind of drive and commitment to it. It's good to see commitment. You know, you don't want somebody who's going to be taking their foot off the gas the moment you announce the show. You want somebody who's going to be collaborative with you and get moving and start promoting that show. I mean, all events are collaborative. You know, the artist plays a part, the venue plays a part, the artist's fan base plays a part, ticketing agents play a part, you know, social media plays a part. And so, you know, it's important that you have an artist who's committed to their bit of the role. I get sent a lot of music. Well, I've had a year where I didn't get sent as much, but historically I get sent a lot of music. So when I'm saying think about something exciting, it's probably worth trying to find not only the venue that makes sense to you, but the person who receives that diary, and try and work it out what it is they like. So there's some things I promote in-house, and there's some things that, you know, I let people hire the venue for, and there's other things that I'm not that interested in. So, for instance, we don't promote covers bands at Night and Day and tribute bands. And that's not because I have any particular political bias against them. I'm just not interested in them. And nobody in the venue is interested. What we're interested in is artists writing and performing their own music. And that's just us. You know, if other people want to do that, fine. But that's just us. And so there's no point if you're one of those bands approaching me. I would say one of the things you should bear in mind when you're sending music in is this. They're the three types of things I get sent in. And the vast majority of what I get sent is that thing in the middle. It's just okay. On one side of it, there's things that are just dreadful, either poorly recorded, poorly performed, sort of just messy, untogether, not ready. Those artists who aren't ready. And then there's that tiny little Venn bubble on the other side where it's absolutely drop dead brilliant. And it's just made for me. And so I think you should probably just aim for amazing. And I know it's probably glib and it's quite easy to say aim for amazing, but try and be as sensational as possible, because so much of what I get is just okay. You know, it's nothing wrong with it, but there's also nothing extraordinary about it. My colleague Callum, who works in my office, the phrase that gets said quite a lot is when somebody sends the music and we all, me and him listen to it and we kind of, we have a conversation about it. The phrase that gets said quite a lot is, well, it's not shit, which is sort of damned by faint praise, isn't it? So yeah, I think, again, as glib and as throwaway as it might sound, try and be sensational. Okay, so the venue diary holder has gotten back to you. You've had to remind them a couple of times, but they've gotten back to you. And they're happy to confirm the date. They're going, you know what, that date's free. So what you do is, you say, I'd like to put a pencil on that date, please. You're not confirming anything. You're just putting a pencil on that date to stop all those other promoters piling on, because you want to be first pencil. So you get that date first penciled. And then while that's happening, you double check a bunch of things. So before you confirm that date and you say to the promoter, we're definitely hiring the venue, you do a bit of research about the venue. So what are their socials like? How often do they tweet and post on Instagram and on Facebook? Does it look like they support the people who hire the venue? Do they do posts about how often do those posts happen? Now, you can often ask the venue outright about this, but you certainly need to know. Do they have listings flyers? Will you go on those listing flyers? Do they have listings posters? If you print posters, will those posters go up in the venue? Will they take a ticket allocation? Try and find out as much about that venue as possible. Can you flyer outside some of their gigs that they're going to be putting on? Just try and build up a picture of that venue and make sure it's absolutely perfect for you. Plainly, you need to double check the date with your band members and anybody else that you plan to put on that bill. It's certainly been the case where I've hired the venue to people, and then and they've gone, no, all go, that's the date, and we've inked it in. I've sent them an invoice, I've sent them a contract, and then I've had an email maybe a week or so later going, look, sorry, we can't do it anymore. The bass player's getting married. And there's been no communication between the band about a significant life event that's going to get in the way of this gig. And so double check the date with the people that's certainly in your own band, certainly with anybody else you're on the bill, just to make sure everybody can do that date. Make sure it's nobody's birthday or anniversary or or anything like that. Do your sums. So we'll talk about this a little more later on, but consider your costs and your break-even point. So, as best you know them, even if you just write it down, even if you're not you're not versed to Excel or numbers or any of those programs, just scribble down the costs and make sure that you've got your sums, so that you've spent all the money you need to spend on that show. Venue hire, artist fees, catering, posters, social media boosts, all that stuff. You can work out where your break even is. It's going to be really tight in those small venues. It's going to be super tight at those sort of 100 cap, smaller end of the GMV scale. Consider what roles you'll need to cover yourself. So we looked at all those promoter roles earlier on, didn't we? Which of those roles are you going to need to cover? Now, some venues, you're going to go in and they go, no, it's okay for the venue hire. We put a cashier in, we put a sound engineer in. All you need to come in is essentially stage manage the whole thing, pay people, bring catering in. But some of those small venues, they're not going to give you a cashier. And so you need to think, are you going to sit on the box office, or are you going to get somebody to do it? So just consider those things. Start to consider those roles that you might need to cover yourself. That's going to involve you asking the venue what you get for that venue hire. And then any competition that evening. Now, in a city like Manchester, that question leads to madness most of the time, because there's competition every night. There's things on Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Sunday nights, daytimes. But it is probably a good idea to make sure that there's no big gig killer going on. Like a big arena show somewhere that's going to take a load of people away, or a big thing in a big park in that everybody piles onto. So it probably is worth kind of looking at if there's any kind of competition. Some of the other things you need to ask the venue before you hire them is double check what their capacity is. You're going to need to do that to do your costs. What PA and production is in there. Once in my career, I didn't ask the question what PA and production was in there because I had it in my head. I'd asked the promoter what was happening, and he'd said they were going to bring a production. And I turned up to play a church, and there was literally nothing in there. We had to sort of summon a PA and production out of midair, and so it's happened to me once. So probably not a good idea to turn up to the venue and realise there isn't a stage and production in there. Ask the venue if they do any PR for you, because like I said, these events are collaborative. If the venue aren't prepared to push it on socials and aren't prepared to hit their mailing list, or don't have connections with the ticket agents who might hit a mailing list, who are all going to help kind of sell tickets and push people towards your show, then maybe that's the wrong venue. Maybe you'd be better going with a venue that's more proactive and is going to kind of get behind you. Okay, at that point, has anybody got any questions at that point? It feels like chatter, nothing in chat so far.
Jay, I just thought it was what I've took from it so far is some key points is make sure that you're matching your music and audience, with the venue and the diary keeper. Yeah. Think about how you present your music in your press kit. Go for awesome rather than mediocre.
Yes.
And also check how much the venue is going to be working on promo with you and what they'll allow you to do and they'll do with you. So some really good top tips coming through from this. So thank you.
That's all right.
Running loads here.
I mean, I've certainly hired venues where I've had to get back to them and go, look, could you just post on Instagram? Could you just tweet about it? Could you just share the Facebook event? Where I've had to sort of kick them down the road a bit. Well-known venues who just haven't, granted, those small grassroots venues don't have a big office full of people working there. They don't have a PR department. They don't have somebody who's just doing socials. But I still feel it's incumbent on them to push shows that they've accepted into their diary. And I think it's completely realistic for an artist to expect that of a venue they've hired. If a venue says, we don't do any of that, then you need to know that before you kind of sign a contract. Okay, so a brief divergent conversation about busking. I've seen this guy busk. He does it in and around Manhattan. He does science fiction theme tunes with a handmade cardboard Boba Fett helmet on the accordion. He's fab. Okay, so it's probably worth mentioning that the Musicians Union can give you really good advice on busking. Many areas, cities, towns have restrictions on how, when and where musicians can play. In some towns and cities, you need to have to register. Some have a little more relaxed take on it. You need to kind of think about your neighbourhood and then research what those parameters are in your neighbourhood. Most city council or local authority websites will have details on what to do if you're a busker. If they don't, you're probably going to have to kind of chase that up directly. You can check with your Musicians Union regional office because they're going to know what restrictions and practices fit within each neighbourhood. So if you are thinking about busking, just a bit of preparation work beforehand. It's worth pointing out that it's illegal for under 14s to busk in the UK. But the MU is happy to work. If you're an MU member, they're happy to work with you, speaking to local authorities. There's the Keep Streets Live programme, which is there to protect and improve conditions for buskers. There are regional guides for busking, which cover issues like selecting your pitch, volume, being able to sell music at your pitch, how to resolve issues. And the MU has campaigned over the years and has been really successful securing various agreements of codes of conduct around the UK. So I think, yeah, in terms of if you're thinking about busking and not thinking about hiring a venue, two key points really. If you're not an MU member, then your avenue is to kind of speak to the local authority and or the city council and find out what the parameters are. If you are an MU member, you should absolutely speak to your regional person about how and when you can go about it. Like I say, it changes everywhere, so there's no apart from some key rules like under 14s not being able to busk. That thing can change as you move around the UK. In fact, let's do this in a sec. Bear with me a sec. I have. All right, Kelly says, always happy to help out with busking codes of practice, etc. The link I've just put in chat is the link to the MU's gigs and live performances, working as a live performer / busking link. So if anybody wants to kind of grab that link, that'll take you to the relevant page on the MU site. Okay, similar to that, hiring a public space. So if you want to hire a public space for a performance, be that a bandstand or a park, those public spaces are nearly always going to be owned by the local council. So you're absolutely going to speak to the council. They hold what is called the DPS, the Designated Personal Supervisor. It's they've got the license to do things on that land. So what you're going to have to do is, first of all, once you've identified that space of land that you want to do a show on, you need to approach the city council. Some considerations: public liability and employer's liability insurance are both going to be a consideration. A huge risk assessment. You're definitely going to have some kind of risk assessment. Obviously, large depending on the size of the event. You're going to need to generate a site layout plan. You're going to have to write up an event safety management plan. You're going to have to generate a key contacts list, including every contact detail. And then you're going to have to liaise with the Council Event Safety Advisory Group. So it might have a different name, but most councils are going to have an Event Safety Advisory Group. And that's going to be representatives of the City Council, the County Council, the Environmental Health Department, and emergency services. So you'll see, police, fire brigade and ambulance there. You're going to have to liaise with them and have conversations with them. You may need to think about, and let's see, I have another link for you here, getting a temporary events notice. And this is the link to government's temporary event notice details there. It's called a 10. If you want to carry out what's called licensable activity on an unlicensed premises in England or Wales, you must apply at least 10 weeks clear before your event. So if you're going to put on an event that has licensable activity, you need to apply for a temporary events notice. Licensable activity is selling alcohol, serving alcohol to members of a private club, providing entertainment such as music, dancing or indoor sporting events, serving hot food and drink between 11 and 5 a.m. 11 p.m. and 5 p.m. Your event must have fewer than 500 people at all times, including staff running the event, and last no more than 168 hours. You need to get a temporary event notice for every event you hold in the same premises. You can get up to 5 temporary events a year. If you already have a personal license, so if you've got a personal license that allows you to serve drinks behind a bar, manage a bar, you can be given up to 50 temporary event notices a year. Any single premises can have 15 10s applied for in 1 year, as long as the total length of the event is not more than 21 days. It's a lot to take in one go, but if you go to that government temporary event notice link, you'll find out a little more about it, and it'll go over this in detail. The council aren't able to refuse a temporary event notice unless it's objected to by the police or environmental health, and they have 3 working days to do that from receiving the temporary event notice. They are allowed to object if they think it could lead to crime and disorder, cause a public nuisance, be a threat to public safety, or obviously put children at harm. They're the 4 things that they might want to object for. It's quite a big ask putting on an event outside, and so I suspect that people, for the purposes of this conversation, putting on your first gig, it probably wouldn't be the easiest thing to do if you're putting on your first gig. Busking, perhaps so, but putting on an outside gig, it becomes quite onerous. And there's quite a lot to do. So you probably are better looking at a small music venue that's got a setup and production and a bunch of parameters in place. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, let's move on to money and how not to lose it. This is important, isn't it? Look at that there. Look how much money that person's made there. Getting, it looks like he's taking £20 notes on the door of some gig somewhere. Looks like that gig's made money. So you're putting on a gig. And like we say, you've decided to put a costing together to make sure you know when your break-even point is. So, basic event costs to consider. Venue hire. Some venues give their venues away for free. If you can identify one of those where you actually get some help and production and staffing for free, amazing. But most of them are going to charge a venue hire, and that venue hire is going to cover incumbent costs. You're going to need to consider how you're paying the acts on the bill, including yourself. Are you giving them a split of the door? Are you giving them a fee? Are they getting paid based on how many people they bring in? You know, what parameters have you decided on with those artists? Staff not covered by the venue. So, you know, if the venue don't provide a cashier and you don't want to do it yourself, is a friend going to do it for free? Or are you going to pay somebody? Are you going to pay somebody to do your art? Print. Are you going to print posters, flyers? Are you going to get somebody to do some digital art? Are you going to pay somebody to distribute those posters? Now, this is a thing where you could ask the venue. If you've hired a venue and you've had posters printed, you should absolutely be giving some to the venue to put up and try and get one in their window, etc. But the venue might have a deal with a local print distributor, a poster and flyer distributor, where you can piggyback onto that. Now, the deal I have for the venue is that we give the local distributor a certain amount every month and we pay him a fixed fee. Sometimes, if I've not given him as many shows as I would normally do, or if I'm not putting on so many shows that month and there's a gap, I just load it up with other event posters. So we're kind of fulfilling that amount that we've agreed to give to him. And so it's always worth asking that. Are you going to take out any local advertisements? Are you going to do any digital ads? Are you going to pay for boosts on Instagram? Are you going to pay for boosts on Facebook? Are you treating the artist to any catering? Are you going to buy them beers and waters and snacks? I would be really careful about some of these costs because plainly, if you've got a 100 capacity show and you're trying to keep your ticket price quite low, these all chip away at your break-even point. You know, I mean, I think at a small level, it's probably fine to break even on one of these shows. You don't really want to lose money though, because that's just kind of, you know, that's bad practice. Far better to kind of pare down the catering and the party snacks people are getting when they arrive than take a massive hit on a show. So we're going to look at collection societies in a bit, but the Performing Rights Society, PRS, the venue may charge back the PRS to you. So don't worry too much about what that is, but essentially it's the PRS is a collection agency that collects money and feeds it back to composers. You know, be that you if you're performing all your own songs, or somebody else if you're performing somebody else's songs. And then VAT. So if a venue's charging you 100 quid and you're going, brilliant, I've put 100 quid into my costing, you're not VAT registered. You need to think about VAT because suddenly that 100 quid is 120 quid, isn't it? So put a thorough costing together and know exactly the point when you break even. All the costings I put together, I could say it breaks even when I've sold 82 tickets. I pretty much know exactly how many tickets to sell when it's going to break even. Now, you might want to consider putting advanced tickets on sale. Advanced tickets do one really brilliant thing. They let you know how the show's going. And without advanced tickets, you kind of know, but you don't completely know. And so in terms of a costing, if you put advanced tickets on sale, and you go, sold 40, sold 42, sold 50, sold 55, and you know you're going to break even at 60 tickets. That moment when you've sold 60 tickets, just the weight pours off you because you know your show's a success then. You've wiped your face completely. So absolutely consider putting advanced tickets on sale. Aside from the fact that those ticket agents have got databases they can hit as well, and they might help with a bit of PR and help with socials and things. Sometimes if you're promoting a show and you're promoting an artist where you have spoken to a booking agent or they've got representation, you might get asked for to pay a thing called national ads, and that's when a booking agent charges you some money and every other promoter who's putting that artist on a tour, and it all goes together in a part and pays for ads in national newspapers and well-known blogs and things. But it's unlikely that's going to occur at the moment if you're promoting yourself and some artists you know. Definitely give yourself some room to break even. So if you're going into a 100 capacity venue, try to get that cost. Great if you could break even at 50 tickets, but at least give yourself some room for cost to kind of move a tiny bit. So just a little bit of break even room. If you are paying artists for live shows, these are the types of deals that you'll see more often than not. So the obvious one, a guarantee, which is a flat fee. So you're saying to an artist, you're getting 100 quid and that's it. Doesn't matter how the show does, whether it sells out or sells zero, that's a guaranteed fee. Then there's a thing called a versus deal. A thing, you don't often see these in very small venues, but it's kind of good for you to start to wrap your head around these ideas. A versus deal is a fee versus a percentage, whichever's larger. So for instance, I'm going to give you £500 or 80% of the box office after costs, whichever's larger. A plus deal is a fee plus a percentage after cost, so they get a guarantee, and then when they break even, they start to get more and more money. Then there's a support fee, so if you're asked to support a larger artist, you're going to get a flat guarantee, and that's kind of like a support, let's call it a support fee. They're never that great. It's at grassroots level, it's been 50 quid for about 20 years, mystifyingly. And then there's a thing called a ticket split, which is where you break down the door and you split that money between the bands. So sometimes the promoter takes half and the artist take half. Or if you're promoting the show, you might say, well, we've got 4 artists on the door. After costs, we're going to split the door 4 ways. This is all about you, when you're putting your costing together, thinking what works for the show, but also what you think's fair, what you're comfortable doing with those other artists. It's about finding the sweet spot where you and all those other artists are happy. Okay, so grassroots music venue, job roles. Low staffing levels in grassroots music venues. I mean, at night and day, you know, with 300 capacity, the office only has me and the proprietor in it. You know, the proprietor doing all the legislative stuff that keeps the venue, you know, legal and moving along and paying people and, you know, bills and whatnot, and me doing literally everything else. So, you know, there aren't going to be many staff in these small grassroots venues you're hiring. It's not like you're going to go in and there's going to be crew in there and a lighting engineer and, you know, lots of people around. You're probably going to turn up in that room and there's going to be a sound engineer and nobody else. So, but you will need a box office cashier, as we said. Sound engineers probably are going to be there. There probably will be a venue or bar manager, and that's probably the person you're going to end up paying. Every so often you go to one of these grassroots music venues and they'll say, oh, the hire is just the engineer's fee. So just give the engineer the money on the night. The engineer gives you an invoice, and that's it. All they want is the engineer covering. That used to be the case in a couple of Mancunian venues. You won't find a monitor engineer. The front of house sound engineer is going to be doing that. There's going to be no lighting designer, no crew, no stage manager. Stage managing is going to be down to you. Okay, collection societies, they're the PRS. There are more collection societies than the PRS, but the PRS is currently the main one. I've written all this down so that you can refer to these slides later on. So trying to keep this simple. Collection societies collect compositional royalties on behalf of composers and publishers who own that copyright. Not the performers, the people who've written those songs or own the copyright to those songs. The PRS collect money via license fee paid by businesses that play music. And within that group of businesses that plays music, you know, sometimes it'll be shops, sometimes it's Lyft Music, also, you know, all the online streaming services and everything. But within that is music venues. The music venues pay money to the PRS, and then on a good day, the PRS pay that money back to the composer at some point in the future. Music venues that hold live events are required to have a license and are assigned a tariff based on their individual operation. So if you're hiring a venue, the PRS may be charged back to you as a variable cost, much like VAT. The current live tariff, there are different tariffs, but the current live music tariff is 4.2% of the net box office with a basic of 15 quid. So speak to the venue, consider the best stroke worst case scenario for the PRS. If you sell out, they're going to look at how many tickets you've sold on that door, 4.2% of net box office, and charge that PRS back to you. So that's got to go into your costs. Now, what I would say is some considerations here. Some small venues are on a fixed tariff and they just swallow it. So you might not get charged the PRS. It depends on what tariff they're on. You may find some of those small venues don't charge it back to you because they're on a fixed tariff that isn't a variable. They're just going to swallow it and you're not going to have to think about it. If they do charge it back, here's something to consider. If you aren't a registered PRS member and you're performing all your own music, if everybody else on the bill aren't PRS members and they're performing all their own music, you can sign a waiver form, the PRS get that, and it goes down to zero. Because the alternative would be they'd be collecting money that they couldn't distribute because no members are playing. So there are waiver forms. If the venue don't have those, I don't even think you can download from the PRS website. They're kind of, it's a bit like a Hitchhiker's Guide, where the plans to have the earth demolished are sort of in a basement underwater in a filing cabinet. If you need a waiver form, ask me, I'll send you it. But anyway, if you are a PRS member, make sure you get, you follow due process and get that money collected and back to you, of course. Okay, tech considerations. So, to make things run smoothly on the day of the show, in advance, it's good to speak to the venue and go, right, who's going to be the sound engineer on night, or who's the head tech person there? Can I have a conversation with them? And what you do is you send them a load of things. You tell them who's playing, you tell them if you've got a stage plot of the band, the drawing from above, one of these. If you've got a stage plot, it doesn't have to be as fancy pants as that. But you could just scribble it down. Have I got the? I have got the link. How brilliant is that? This one was done on a free online app called Diagrams, where essentially you can build things like that. That's the link in chat. It's good for them to get that. A channel list would normally go alongside it, which is a list of all the instruments and how many mics are going to be needed, how many DI boxes are going to be needed. But for a grassroots level, even just sending that or something similar to that. I mean, I've had them done drawn in crayon, and that's just fine. It just means that the sound engineer is going to be more prepared when you turn up, and it's going to run more smoothly on the night. Certainly consider left-handed drummers. If you've got three artists on, and one of those drummers is a southpaw, and they're in the middle, that means a drum kit has to be taken apart, put back to front, taken apart, put back to front again. And so the smart advice is, if you've got a left-handed drummer, put them at the beginning of the end, so you're only changing the kit once. But the sound engineer is probably going to do this. You need to consider that the venue probably isn't going to have any backline. Most venues don't have any backline set there. There won't be a drum kit, there won't be any amps for you to use. As an artist, you're going to have to bring all that stuff in. Certainly consider kit share. So, in a small space, you don't want 3 or 4 drum kits being loaded in and on stage together. Speak to the other artists, arrange sharing a kit, and then changing breakables. Breakables being kick pedal, snare, cymbals, stool, sticks. But yes, some kind of conversation with the venue sound engineer is going to make things run so much more smoothly on the night itself. Okay, so contracts, invoices, advancing, and paperwork. When you agree, that's Daddy Longlegs at Night and Day, they're brilliant. The venue may well generate a contract for you. So you might get a contract saying you're hiring the venue and here's an invoice. Sometimes venues want a deposit paying in advance. They sometimes ask for 50%. But at these small, very small grassroots venues, if you're putting your first show on, unless you're moving up to sort of 300 capacity plus, they're probably not going to ask for a deposit, but they're probably going to want the money paid on the night. Remember to take into account VAT. Okay, so this is important. What is advancing? So you've got your venue, you know the day of the show, you know who's playing. You need to advance information to people. So advancing happens between the promoter and the venue. So even if you're the artist, you're the promoter in this instance. Also, you and the other bands. And this is you getting all the information that the venue are going to need for the day of the show and the other artists are going to need for the day of the show. And you getting to that to them as far in advance as possible. Sometimes I get, for night and day, I tend to program, again, under normal circumstances, it's a bit different now, sort of 3 to 4 months in advance. So the moment I know a show's in and I've got a contact for the tour manager or I've got a contact for the artist, I start getting information to them so they can start planning ahead. It's to start a dialogue about the event in advance so that everything runs smoothly on the night. I mean, good advancing is really crucial. Artists will need to know, so the other people on the bill, they're going to need to know the event date, remind them of that, the venue address and contact info for that sound engineer so that they can have that tech conversation, the venue tech spec, what's the technical specifications of the venue, who else is on the bill and their contact details so the artists can speak to one another about kit share and such like, amp share sometimes. Venue facilities, are there dressing rooms, are there showers? Parking information, has the venue got secure parking or you're going to have to find some parking elsewhere in the neighbourhood? Times for the show. When are you arriving? When are you loading in? What time are you sound checking? What are stage curfews and event curfews? Social media links for the venue and other artists so you can actually get to work and link each other into all that PR you're doing. You'll be sending digital art to people to share online. You were talking to people absolutely about any access issues at the venue. Now we're quite blessed at Night and Day because Night and Day is on the ground floor, the stage and the bar and everything on the ground floor, and we have an accessible toilet at the end. But I still have access conversations with people that aren't about physical access; they're about people understanding information about that show in advance. So thinking about making sure that everybody within the workings of that show and everybody who's involved in that show has the same information. Also good to know, the ability to leave equipment in the venue overnight. Sometimes you don't want to load out and take it away. Is there a secure place to leave stuff overnight? The venue and their tech staff, they will need to know. Contact details for all the artists on the bill. Stage plots and channel lists for each artist that we've just seen. So even a piece of paper that says 4-piece band, 1 times guitar, 1 times bass, 1 times drum, 1 times vocal. Even that is better than nothing. Proposed event timings, so the venue know what times people are going to go on stage, because they might be getting emails, questions via social media and calls about when people are on stage, etc. Also, they're going to need when you're going, playing. You all need to know when you're loading in so people can prepare. They're going to need social media links for all artists so they can do PR. They're going to take digital art off you. I mean, I get a digital version of poster and of each gig poster and photos of artists and all tons of assets so that I can do venue PR on the show. They're going to speak to the venue about any access requirements for the artists, and then obviously about equipment being held overnight. You're also going to have ongoing conversations about how tickets are being sold. So if whether the venue have taken a ticket allocation or not, they're going to want to know how the show's looking. The more the venue knows about how many tickets have been sold, the more they will feel comfortable with regards to their own staffing. You can have a health and safety conversation with the venue to assess the risk level of the event. So plainly, if this event is a solo singer-songwriter on a stool with an acoustic guitar, that's going to have a different risk implication than some hardcore band where people are kind of throwing each other through the air and out into the crowd. So you probably will have a conversation with the venue about that. And obviously, like I said, the venue sound engineer will stay in contact with each of the artists or to discuss live sound considerations. Okay, health and safety, public liability. So public liability insurance is one of the types of business insurance. It can cover compensation payments and legal costs if a customer or someone working for, or even a passerby, sues a venue because they've been injured or their property has been damaged. Public liability insurance and the protection it offers is pretty simple but quite essential. The most basic level, it protects a business from legal costs and compensation payments from injury or anything bad happening to people within the building. Now, it can cover anything from minor workplace incidents to expensive accidents. It's not a legal requirement, but it's almost always taken out by businesses that interact with the general public. If you're hiring a small grassroots music venue, you don't need to think about that. You might have a conversation about how the show's going to do and health and safety implications for the show, but the venue will have taken out public liability insurance. This wouldn't be a cost for you. I've never once paid it. Plainly, the venue have some licensing obligations that are going to help this down the road anyway, because they're selling liquor. Then they're tied to the Licensing Act 2003. And in the UK, the Licensing Act has 4 provisions. I think it's 5 in Scotland, weirdly. I always forget what the 5th Scottish one is, but it's 4 in England. The prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and protection of children from harm. That's their obligation. So they have absolutely got to do that. You don't need to consider that. Right, so the show's booked. You've started liaising with the venue manager, the other acts on the bill, and the sound engineer. What now? Dead simple. Everyone pushing in the same direction. Everyone gets working. As I said, all events are collaborative. So you write up your marketing action plan, consider the time span between now and when the gig is, and how much time you've got to kind of do that work to sell the gig. Can you allocate tasks to other people, or are you doing it all yourself? Can other people kind of within the bands and within your band take on some of these tasks? And somebody else go, well, okay, I'll deal with the poster distribution, or I'll deal with some of the socials. As we said, the venue should help, ticket agents should help, other artists should help. Talk to your audience, even if initially it's friends, family, work colleagues, and well-wishers, people you know. Friends, family, work colleagues, well-wishers. Even if it's people you know, speak to them and get them to spread the word and do the word-of-mouth thing. Make certain that the venue and the ticket agents and everybody who needs your press assets have them all. You know, press release, picture, web links, etc. Ask the venue about their email database. Can you be included in that? Do the ticket agents have a database? How often can they push it? Share information with other artists on the bill. You know, get all the other artists, mention each other, and kind of pushing it together. Make it feel totally collaborative. Certainly, it's good practice to include the venue and the other artists and tagging those venues in all your social media posts. Don't be a stranger to everybody involved. Liaise and review and adjust. Haley says there were some specific workshops coming up on social media and marketing later in March and in April that can help you link through to promoting your gigs. And they're going to be on Eventbrite. Brilliant. Now, a while ago, I was building a lecture for some BIM students, and I was looking at marketing techniques. And I started looking at marketing techniques that got nothing to do with live music. And I came across this thing called the 4 Ps of marketing. Now, the 4 Ps of marketing weren't designed for gigs and the live sector at all. They were designed for people marketing products. But when I looked at them, they made complete sense to me when you tying them in with gigs. So these are the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. So if you're selling vacuum cleaners, it makes complete sense that. But in terms of gigs, it makes total sense. So think of this. Product, your show, is it right and is it ready? Price, is your ticket price right for the show, venue, and customers? Place, have you chosen the correct venue? And promotion, are you doing all the work? Are you selling the show as hard as you can? So even though this wasn't designed for us at all, it sort of makes total sense, and as the more thought about it. Product, is the show right? Have you rehearsed? Do you feel ready that the thing you're going to present is right? Is the product good? Is the price right? Not too much, not too little? Is the venue correct for you? And are you properly selling it? I think if you can nail all those 4 things in that lead into the show, then you're in pretty good shape. John Wanamaker, the American millionaire, said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. Keep an eye on your budget. The suggestion was that 46% of all advertising is going to end up online by 2021. But that's still kind of like it's still heading towards half. Still leaves half that's left. So even though Wanamaker was right, and we don't quite know what posters do, you don't know how many people have looked at it. It's really difficult to quantify how many people looked at a poster when I'm going to that gig. You still need to think about that physical side of it. Posters, flyers, and digital art. There's a show. It's not happening on the 27th of April 2021 now because plainly that would be Fantasyland. It's going to happen in 2022. That's the wonderful junior from Paris who I'm putting on. So yeah, striking art, some nice visuals is absolutely key. Get your artwork right. So on average, 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. When you've written your headline, you've spent 80 cents out of your dollar. That's David Ogilvy. He's the father of advertising. Art and design checklist. So, have you included all the relevant info? Is it easy to digest by somebody walking past? The idea is that you should be able to sell your show to somebody passing it or glancing at it in no more than 10 seconds. Is it visible from a distance? Remember the brand, artist, venue, promoter. Does it have a dominant focal point? Does it use a space well? Size and shape matter, particularly for print costs. So, social media, adverts and boosts. Make sure the artists are on board, make sure the venue's on board, ticket agents, any fan networks, any labels. If the artist has got a record deal, however small, can they kind of get behind the PR and get involved in the social media boost? Vary the type of messages, so don't just make these bland messages that just sit with the facts. Vary the type of messages. Be personal. Mention the venue and other artists, like we said. Engage directly with the fan base. Build different lists. So as you're kind of thinking about kind of gigs and how you're going to emerge, you could have a national list, you can have a PR list, you can have a local fan base list, a radio. Just think about building different lists so that you can target different people. Schedule social to save time. So you can definitely schedule posts on Facebook. On Twitter, TweetDeck is the one that allows you to schedule as many tweets as you like. So you could schedule them months in advance. Instagram, I think most of them are paid. Vary the times you post. So if you're posting at 9 a.m. one day, then don't post 9 a.m. the next day, because you're hitting essentially the same people who are either, who are up and about and online at 9 a.m. Think about noon. Think about doing things at tea time, things when people get home from work, posts later on in the evening. Just vary them around the schedule so you're hitting as many people as possible. Create a community. Don't always be on the sell. I'm going to rattle through some of these because we're running out of time. Those are the things ticket agents can hit. Previous customers who like your genre, customers who like the venue. They have a huge ticket agent email list. If you do it on more than one ticket agent, you'll hit multiple databases. Make sure that if you're using ticket agents that you put them to work. Use press and free listings. Certainly, you should use as many free press outlets as possible. There's some things to go into your marketing plan for your event. Word of mouth, posters and flyers, artist database, artist label, socials and fan interaction if they have a label, venue database and socials, ticket agent database and socials, local magazine and print advertising, national advertising, social media adverts, boosts and retweets and mentions. Look up local radio DJs and their producers. They're quite easy to get hold of. As a show date looms, and making the most of a show. On the day of the show, arrive on time, schedule socials for the day, be prepared, bring everything you're supposed to bring. Be polite, ask people their names and remember them. Make the most of your sound check, stick to the allocated stage time and set length, don't hide in the dressing room, meet the crowd. Remember, dressing room graffiti is super dull. Man the merch table, thank everybody. Just a few other considerations. Think that you might be juggling roles on the night. You will potentially be the artist, promoter, stage manager, cashier, crew and runner. Merchandising. If your show looks like it's borderline making money, merchandise might kind of tip it over into profit for you. Is there a merch area? If not, sell from outside of your van. Do the venue charge? They shouldn't. Speak to the MU if they do. Ask the venue promoter if what you're selling, your prices are usual for that town or that place. Set up before the show. Everybody take turns manning the merch stall. Don't dump somebody on it and throw them under the bus and make them stick there for the entirety of the show. And try and sell items that people can't buy elsewhere. Here's a picture of something that I bought from an artist who did it for one tour. It's a giant blue Sasquatch. It's in a box It's over there somewhere. And they did it for one tour just so they could bankroll the tour. It was Herman June is the band. I also had an artist come through, who'd broken his guitar case in between gigs, and he put it on the merch table. Broken guitar case, 20 quid, just so he didn't have to throw it away. Okay, and finally, my colleague Sandy used to say to me, when we had a show and the room was full and the band were being brilliant on stage and people were taking a drink and merch was getting sold and it felt amazing, he used to turn to me and say, Jay Taylor, tonight we're everything that we're supposed to be. And that's what you're aiming for. That's exactly what you're aiming for every night. And when you get to the point where the headline band are on stage and you stand at the back, sort of anonymous, it should feel that you're everything you're supposed to be. One last thing. Afterwards, treat shows as special, singular, important things. Give them distance. Don't pile one on top of the other. Don't make them seem insignificant because you're just doing them one after another. It's not a conveyor belt. Each show should feel like an event. Look at your footage, photographs and recordings afterwards. Scrutinise those so you can learn something from those events. Collect data and feedback. Assess, discuss, tweak, change, improve, and let each show inform the other ones.